Welcome back, everybody. So today's going to be a little bit different than usual. Schools are posting their job openings left and right. Everybody's applying. I was a first grade teacher last year, so I thought I'd share some of the questions that I received, as well as some of the answers I gave, and some ideas for answers that you can give as well. So let's jump into the video. Okay, they start off with a hot one, the one that nobody likes. Tell us about yourself. Okay, very vague, very broad. I would recommend writing out a script to practice. Make it about 30 seconds long. Highlight your educational background, past work experience, whether it's in the classroom or not, and any specializations that you have. Whenever you talk about previous work experiences that might be totally unrelated to the classroom, just make sure to highlight different points of that would be transferable to skills in the classroom. For example, I talked about working at a think tank in DC prior to coming to this interview, and I would say things like, so before this, I worked at a human rights think tank in DC, which really developed my oral communication skills. Okay, that was great. I would also be like, during my time at UT, I worked for different humanitarian organizations focused on children. I was able to work with Syrian refugees to develop their literacy skills, to develop their cultural awareness. So keep it brief, but definitely make sure to mention and highlight the skills that will be easily transferable to the classroom. And things that you might not even think would be transferable, like if you worked at an office job, talk about how you garnered your organizational skills doing that, how you became more of an analytical thinker, how you used your research, etc., etc. So whatever previous experiences you had, just make sure to tie in those skills that you garnered from those jobs into transferable skills in the classroom. Okay, number two, always a fun one, very broad. Once again, why do you want to become a teacher? So for me, this one was quite easy. I grew up with a lot of family members who were teachers, had always been interested in teaching. After working for a think tank for children's rights, I wanted to have more of a direct impact on children, and I couldn't think of a better opportunity to do so than to work as an elementary school teacher. Now for you, the answer might be a little bit different. You could talk about a teacher that you had that really ingrained a sense of self-confidence in you, that really developed your love for learning. You can talk about skills that you've developed thus far in your life that make you feel confident to step into the classroom as an independent teacher. Whatever is true to you, again, I would emphasize keeping this fairly brief because it is so broad and vague that it is easy to just ramble on and on about it. Number three, what's your classroom management style? Now this one can be very difficult whenever you have never been in a classroom before, as was my experience, because I am not an education major. But now looking back on it, I definitely have some helpful tips for this kind of a question. You need to think about the type of classroom environment that you want to cultivate, and your classroom management style will directly influence that environment that you create. Now, my answer would probably be to what's your classroom management style? Calm but assertive. It's very important to instill routine in the children early on because they thrive off of routine. It's important to have a lot of positive reinforcement, both for the individual student and for the class as a whole, because a great learning environment is truly cultivated by the collective rather than the individual. So just my classroom management style, calm but assertive, viewing the student as a holistic being and positively reinforcing not only individual students, but the classroom as a whole to create a better learning environment for all. Question number four, which literacy plan are you more familiar with, Fountas and Pinnell or Heggerty? Again, this threw me for a loop, not being an education major. So my advice to you is to familiarize yourself with both of these, understand their key points, maybe have one that you prefer more than the other, but talk about how you are able to adapt to either plan and the pros that you see for both. That's really all that I can really advise. I was very honest in this and said that I had not been exposed to either, that Heggerty sounded familiar, but I wasn't exactly sure what that was, and I apologize. But then I went into kind of my own literacy plan for kids, and I talked about how important it is to have manipulatives there for beginning readers. I was applying for a first grade job, so of course I talked about that, and phonemic segmentation. I talked about the different ideas that I had for activities regarding phonemic segmentation with letter tiles, with marbles, and then you put down a piece of Play-Doh for each one, and then you can build it up into a little snowman to blend the word. So I talked about all these different ideas that I had regarding literacy because I was not very well versed in either of the two strategies that they were talking about, and that proved to be very effective. As long as you show that you're confident and you're familiar with the content, they'll love that. So just do your best. Another question I received, it was more of a scenario type question. Basically, a student is consistently off task. What do you do? And I started off my answer by saying that it's important to view the student holistically, right? You can't just see them for that one bad thing that they're doing because you don't know the type of morning that they've had, the type of night that they had the night before. And so it's a good idea to address the class as a collective rather than narrowing in on that individual, because that can make them feel targeted. They could be very sensitive to that, especially at that time if they are misbehaving. So for example, if it was the fact that a student just keeps getting out of their seat just randomly and in a disrupting way, you could say something like, when we need to get out of our seats, what do we need to do? And then they'll say, raise our hands. There are these different things that you can rehearse with your kids so that they know the answer that they are supposed to give immediately. And then hopefully that would trigger within the student's mind, like, okay, I'm not supposed to be doing this. I need to just sit down, chill out. Then if that doesn't work, you can just do something simple depending on the student. Sometimes all it takes is a little tap on the shoulder to let them know that you see them, you're addressing them, you'd like for them to focus, settle down. Some kids don't go for that at all. Again, it depends on knowing the student. If you just make eye contact with them, just give them a little bit of a knowing look, they'll get it together. If that doesn't work, you can just address them quietly, privately, have them go sit down in the calm down corner, have different activities ready there for them to do, have a little, what are those things called? Time shakers, and you flip it over and that will tell them the amount of time that they have there to sit in the calm down corner, have little pop-its there for them, a little squishy, a little squishmallow, paper for them to draw on, whatever it takes for them to calm down, have them come back. It is important to understand that the rest of the class does need to learn, so you can't put the 20 other students on the back burner all because this one child is having a difficult time. And so it is important to try all those whole group ways first, where you can continue teaching, you can continue to help the other students while addressing the misbehavior and redirecting the students. But if it does get to a point where it's just consistently disrupting the other students from their learning, to just allow yourself to take that pause. Just take a 1-minute pause to either talk with a child or to redirect them to the calm down corner, because that 1 minute you take away from the learning experience will maximize their learning for the rest of the lesson. Whereas if you just let that child continue to disrupt and be disruptive in their behavior, everyone else is going to be distracted for the next 30 minutes. So it's important to address the behavior immediately and calmly. The next question I received was, how will you build relationships with your students? So now my answer to how would you build relationships with your students, it would be to address them as the person that they are. Understand that even though they are little, they are capable of big emotions, of serious life issues, of important emotional things that are weighing heavily on their heart. And so it's important to talk with them as the person that they are, not in a condescending way, not in a way that's all simplified for them because they are little. They understand so much more than we expect them to, and it's important to realize that they're just little versions of us, and so you just need to be able to talk with them as such. The answer that I did give was similar to that, and it also highlighted how You know, it's important to have a morning routine where you have circle time and you share about what you did the day before, or you talk about your favorite sports or your favorite ice cream, your favorite holiday, what you and your brothers and sisters are doing. And it's equally important that you yourself as a teacher share about your own hobbies, your own family, your own pets. They love that. And so as much as you want to hear from them about their own lives, in order to build that relationship, you need to share about yourself with them, because that makes them feel like they're part of your inner circle, that they understand you, then they have things that they can relate with you about. I cannot tell you how many students built a relationship with me solely based off of the fact that I had my dog Rascal, I had his picture in my classroom, and that really bonded me with about half the class instantaneously. So definitely do not undervalue the importance of sharing about yourself with the students. They want to know about you. Okay, the next question I received, what are your strengths and weaknesses? Which is a great question and also a horrible question. There's a way to be honest about this without totally beating yourself up, and I think that's important to do. So for strengths, you're really going to want to talk about things that are going to make you an effective teacher in the classroom. Things that I shared about myself was my patience. I'm a very patient person. I am very long-suffering. I also talked about how I am very organized, and that is important to me to meet goals, and in order to meet goals you need to be organized. And I talked about my communication skills. For this particular job that I was going for, I really highlighted my communication skills in Spanish, because I would be working with all ESL students. So it's just really important to give about 3 strengths that you have that will correlate to you being an effective teacher in the classroom. Don't just give random skills like, oh, I'm really great at time management. Like, that's great, and you can definitely weave that into being a great teacher, like, so I can get my lessons done on time, and I can make sure that I allot enough time to small groups. You can definitely do that, but don't just rattle off all these different strengths that don't really have anything to do with being a great teacher. For weaknesses, I said that my weakness as a teacher being the inability to follow the schedule exactly, because if you are only given an hour for math, and then it's like you're reaching the hour mark, but you can see that the student is just about to have a breakthrough, you want to keep going for that extra 5 minutes, right? But then that can bleed over to other subjects, and you don't want to take away from the students who are getting it, all because this one kid is about to get it, and you don't want to take away from reading time, writing time, just because in this math subject this student is really getting it. So it's important to find that balance, and it's important to understand that, okay, I'm not going to be able to get all of my goals met in one day. We can always come back to this later. That was a weakness that I shared, and it went over really well in the interview. They really started to talk with me more as an individual rather than an applicant whenever it came to that response. The next question I was asked, how do you motivate students? Again, a bit of a tricky one when you haven't ever been in the classroom before, but I said that I would have a lot of positive reinforcement and, you know, provide a treasure box for kids who are great helpers or worked extra hard. Communication with parents is so important and crucial. But now, again, looking back on it, I can give you some key insights. If I was asked now, how do you motivate students? I learned so many different strategies from my first year as a teacher. I really tried to hold off as much as I could on providing tangible prizes and things like that, because I think it's just really important to instill that work ethic into students without there being a tangible prize out there. Like, learning, as corny, cheeseball-y as it sounds, learning should be the prize. You should be able to find the value in the learning process. And so I really focused in on that. I relied heavily on sending notes home to parents, you know, about positive developments in their students' learning, and the kids love that. We used Remind, and so I would take like a picture of their child with like the words that they had written for their story, and I mean, the child is just beaming from ear to ear. I would draw like a big flower on the whiteboard and with a bunch of different petals. And every time they worked really great as a group. Like, I would set a goal for them, like, okay, for 5 minutes, we're all going to be on volume level 0 so we can get this math homework done. And let's see if we can do it for 5 whole minutes. Just be on a 0. If you have a question, raise your hand, but let's be quiet so we can think and come up with our own ideas, and so we can let our friends come up with their own ideas as well. And we'll go radio silent, and if they could get through the whole 5 minutes, they'd be like, it's a petal, and draw on the petal. I had set all these different goals for them to be able to color in all the petals. And so after like a week, the flower would be filled in, and we would always set like, what do we want the prize to be at the end? It could be a dance party, it could be a glow party, it could be a little pizza party, it could be time outside, after social studies, what do you want it to be? And we would always set a different goal. And they loved that, and that really did instill teamwork within them, because then kids would be talking to their friends like, do you not want a glow party? And supporting each other, getting riled up for those parties. And it was really nice seeing them work together. It created a sense of camaraderie amongst the whole group, and that was really great to see those relationships begin to form, because I was fostering an environment that valued teamwork. Whenever I put that 100% stamp on their work, they would freak out. They all wanted me to write 100% on their little worksheets and everything to go home and show their parents. That drove them insane. So those are all really great ideas where you're not going to spend $1 million on prizes, and you're not making learning something where they're like, I need a tangible, if I'm going to learn this math, I better be getting a sticky hand at the end of this thing. It's like, no, that's not the point of learning. And it's also so important to teach that learning is about your friends too, and it's about helping them learn. And so just creating that sense of teamwork within the learning process is crucial, and I think that those are really great ways to motivate your students if you're looking for ways to do that. Almost done with the interview at this point. How do you communicate with parents? So for me, I said I'd send out a weekly newsletter. I talk about what our plans are for this upcoming week, highlights of the work from the past week, as well as any changes to the schedule. Additionally, sending texts via remind about positive behavior as often as I can, and then phone calls beginning of year, middle of year, end of year, very crucial. For those difficult situations whenever it's about a child misbehaving and you're needing to talk to the parent about that. It is important to send home those positive reinforcements as much as possible, so that whenever the time does come to send home something negative about the child, not even negative, but just concerns about their behavior, the parent is able to take it easier. It doesn't feel like an attack on the child because you have sent home so many positive notes about their child already. A last question, what questions do you have for us? Now, at the end of my interview, I asked how they would describe the culture there. And I think that I should have maybe paid more attention to the answer that they gave for this one, because they were honest. So I recommend asking that one 100%. Hopefully they will be honest with you as well, and definitely take it to heart, the answer that they give you. If they say that they're working on creating a more inclusive environment, if they say that they are working on getting better at teamwork, definitely take those things to heart and consider whether or not that's the place for you. Additionally, now I would ask things like, what literacy plan do you have? How do you go about strengthening your students so that they become better readers? Because that's just a really crucial foundational skill that kids need, and whenever a school does not have a clear vision for it, or if they don't have a vision that aligns with your teaching style, sometimes that can be conflicting. So I would definitely ask that. I would also ask, how do they cultivate an atmosphere of teamwork within the school? Do not brush off the answers that they give you, really take them to heart. What to wear to a school teacher interview? Honestly, it's pretty easy, just professional. Whatever, if you're a woman, whatever you would wear to church, honestly, just like a nice blouse, long skirt, long dress, or a nice blouse and slacks. Yeah, just make sure that you stay professional the whole time. Keep your answers succinct. Make sure that you draw in the skills that you have cultivated over the years into how that will make you a great teacher in the classroom, and you will do great. Everyone tends to be very supportive within the field of education, so no need to stress. Remember, they want you, they need you, so you are an asset coming to them, and they're very fortunate to have you there. So I know you'll do great. Let me know how it goes, and see you next time.